literally.
All right, welcome. This is Tarot, Unicorns, and Coffee. This is our Troubleshoot Your Natal Chart. This is part 3 in a series that we are being blessed to have Robin Poole come in and teach and instruct us on. I will be dropping part 1 in the chat here soon, just in case you missed the first one where it shows you how to actually look at your chart. But today we're talking about more ways to interact with your natal planets. As I mentioned, this is Tarot, Unicorns, and Coffee event. Real quick, I'm going to go over our guidelines. Love and light. Always hold yourself in love and light. Love on yourself. Show yourself some love, self-love, self-respect, and hold everyone in the room here that is gathered together for this chance to come into community, to learn, to share. Hold them in love and light as well. And the second rule, don't start no shit, won't be no shit. Behave as adults, or at least adult-ish. And with that, this event is going to be run completely by Ms. Robin Poole. I'm going to be in the background helping with keeping an eye on chat and keeping an eye on the room. So I'm going to turn it over to the lovely Ms. Robin Poole. Take it away.
Great. Thank you guys so much for joining us. So today we're talking about interacting with planetary energies in an actual, like, real way where they start to transform your life, which is something I've been working on a lot as a kind of a refugee from the Western medical health system. Modern Western medicine they couldn't find anything wrong with me. And as a result, they had no treatments to recommend because it's all diagnosis driven. And since they couldn't diagnose me with anything except you seem really unhappy, they were like, well, we don't have anything to tell you about what you should do differently, because they couldn't hear what was wrong. So this is something that's meant a lot to me. And I was telling Valerie, I actually had to use it this morning as emergency medicine in a way that I wasn't even expecting to teach about, but then it happened to me, and I'm like, oh, so maybe I should add this to the class. So I'm going to be presenting my slides, and then we have a couple of people who've paid for readings, and if they are here, then we'll do a practice reading, or maybe I'll just use a chart as an example to give you like a specific practice. But we do have a kind of a small group today, which is great. So that means there's plenty of time for questions, and I do have some like audience participation, put it in the chat, tell spirit what you want kind of moments coming up. But I think I want to start with our grounding, centering, getting in the flow. So we'll do that. And then I will dive in with the story of my morning. Although actually I was watching somebody recently who's a professional speaker, and he said, never tell your audience you're going to start by telling them a story, because they're not in kindergarten. They're not here for story time. So I'm like, oh,
Robin, I will tell you right now, I am in professional speaker, public speaker training, and I'm like going through training with like the #1 speaker training, and he says to always start with a story. So don't listen to whoever you were listening to.
What this person said is, which might be a similar person, he said, always start with a story, but never tell them that you're going to tell them a story.
Oh,
just jump right into it, like surprise, like the stealth story. Oh my gosh, it's a story! I didn't even realize that. Yeah. Okay, but I'm going to not start with a story. I'm going to start. Thank you, Melissa. I see your chat. I'm going to start with grounding, and then we'll get to the not a story. Okay. Okay. So I invite you to feel yourself present in your chair, on your bed, on your couch, wherever you are. If you'd like to close your eyes, you're welcome to. We're just going to tap in to our inner selves, our inquisitive, calm, peaceful, joyful, having a good time with friends, whatever floats your boat, inner self. And let anything else that doesn't really fit with that drift away. If you feel like you might need some of your worries or your to-do list for later in the day, you can visualize a basket at your feet and pick up anything that you need to think about later. They'll be there waiting for you. But for the moment, let's just be here. Let's take a break from our busy to-do list driven lives. Feel the air on our skin. You can ground or center yourself however is good for you. So if you want to center yourself in your heart, if you want to let your aura expand out to the edges of the planet, if you want to feel your energy flowing down into the earth, letting all the toxins release into the earth for renewal and grounding yourself in the earth's energy. If you want to send a beam of light up through your mind out to the stars and ground yourself in the planets, or you might be like me, I'm kind of all of the above, 360-degree grounding and centering. Whatever helps you feel present. And I'd like to set my intention, which you're welcome to join me in or set your own. My intention is that we all come away today with something that we can use to improve our lives, whatever that means for us, for our own highest good. And that today isn't about becoming like anybody else or mimicking me or begging the planets to turn us into our idealized version of who we think we should be. But it's really about discovering what's authentically inside of us and working with these planetary energies to help get us closer to our true selves, our real selves, and whatever areas of growth or transformation or change we're looking for. And I ask Spirit to help us today with any fears or resistance that might come up. I've been dealing with that a lot. And help us have wisdom and discernment about whether that's just fear of change or resistance to doing something new that needs to be healed, or whether this resistance is a this isn't for me moment, or I need to tweak this. I like this idea, but the way that Robin said it doesn't quite work. And so now I need to go on my own, quest or meditation or journaling and make this really work for me. Help us learn to interpret those inner signals. Is this a stop? Is this a healing? Is this a moment of adjustment? And that we'll all be able to come and support each other. I see a lot of familiar faces here and some new faces. And that this will be a space where people feel free to ask questions and get listened to. We can all make public declarations about what we want in our lives, which I think is super powerful. But that when we leave, all cords will be cut and we won't be carrying any energy that wasn't for our own highest good. So we build each other up, but then we leave behind whatever is not for us. I want to say thank you to Valerie for scheduling this and doing all the logistics. And thank you to everybody who's taken their time to be here with us today. And thank you to Spirit and ancestors and the spirits of my home and my property and everybody else's home and property and any positive entities who have gathered around to help make this a beautiful and transformative event. And I want to remind us that we're all empowered to kick out any sort of negative energies that might come and sniff around, and you can exercise your own power and ask for Spirit's help in saying, no, thank you, as my sister says to her 6-year-old. No, thank you to that. No, thank you. I don't want these negative energies in my life. And I just also hope and ask that if anybody has questions that they can occur to them, people will put questions in the chat because I love questions. And we can all tailor this to whatever is good for us. And to anybody who wanted to make it, we just send our comfort and encouragement and fingers crossed that they'll catch replay when it comes out. Okay, another couple of deep breaths. And then when you're ready, you can open your eyes and rejoin us, and we will get started. Okay, thank you guys for giving me time to ground. I always feel much better after I do this. I think maybe I just talk slower after grounding, which is good. So what happened to me this morning was that I woke up feeling like I can't possibly teach this class. And those of you who know me know that I have some trauma in my background, and there are many messages that are like, it's not safe to say what you think. It's not safe to be visible. People aren't going to respect you when they discover that you believe this wacky stuff. And then 2 days ago, I sent out an email to 88 people on my email list announcing that I was teaching this class. So I had what Brene Brown calls a vulnerability hangover, which is after you hit send, you're like, oh my God, what did I do? And then somebody unsubscribed and I was like, see, I'm a terrible person. And I was like, okay, this is not the right energy to be bringing into this class. Plus, of course, like my chest hurt. I was like having trouble breathing. And I thought to myself, I have got to channel better energy here because otherwise I'm not even gonna make it to this class. And then of course, once I get there, I'm not gonna be in a great spot to, teach it in a positive way. And so I did the emergency medicine version of working with planetary energies, which is to change your outfit. And so we're going to be talking, thank you, Melissa. I see that's, Melissa advised me to turn off the button where it shows who unsubscribed. That's like so practical. I love that. Okay, anyway, so yeah, so what I did is I'm just like, I need much more positive energy. And I had planned like a Mars style outfit. And we'll get to what that means later, but it had Mars colors, it had Mars textures. Mars is conjunct my Mercury. And so I thought, well, I'll wear Mars so I'll have stronger communication. And I put it on and I was just like, no, I do not need this Mars fight, struggle energy today. So I changed my outfit, you can see here. And basically what I did is I went with Jupiter, which is this blue. Jupiter energy is really relaxed. So you can see this is kind of an unstructured shirt. It's got like some Western details, but it's not like starched or stiff or ironed. And then I decided I needed to channel more Venus energy. So I went with the pink sequins here. And then I also found these at Goodwill the other day. These are vintage Venetian earrings. And you can see they've got these little pink roses on them. And these are probably from the 1950s or 60s. They were originally part of a set. I was psyched, but can you see when I say that they're Venetian, right? We've got the white, we've got the pink, we've got the gold. They're very feminine. So these are great for channeling. Thank you, Misha. These are great for channeling Venus energies. And as soon as I put the clothes on, I was kind of like, okay, all right, okay. And I felt like I could like breathe. Thank you, Anna. I like the outfit too. I felt like I could breathe again. And I literally like felt my chest cavity relax. And I felt like, okay, here's the energy. And I talked to Spirit and I was like, I really need you guys this morning. And they were like, we'll help you have better energy when you sit down. But it's one of those things where it's like, you know, we're not on our own on this planet in trying to create the energy, the wisdom, the guidance, the organization that we feel that we need to succeed, right? I woke up this morning and I thought, I need positive enthusiasm to teach this class. And then I looked inside of me and I was like, I don't see any in here. I don't see any positive enthusiasm. I just see stress. And then I was like, but I have some sources, right? Jupiter and Venus are the most positive planets in anybody's chart. And according to ancient astrology, they're the source of relaxation, creativity, joy, fun, security. And I'm like, I can take that energy that's out there and by intentionally putting on clothes and jewelry and makeup and saying, please, I'm not just putting the shirt on. I'm putting this shirt on because I want to channel the relaxed, fun energy of Jupiter. That's the thing, right? We all wear clothes every day. But the point is once you start choosing them, and I could have done that with foods. I could have done that by cooking myself a Jupiter breakfast. There's lots of ways you could do that. But it's like, I'm taking these actions because I want more of this energy in my life. So that's the non-story of what happened to me this morning. And now we're going to dive into some more like specific how-tos to do that. I will remind you that I live in a rural area. And so if I pause, just wait 30 seconds and I'll be back. And then somebody should interrupt me and let me know that you lost me. And I'll back up and say whatever I was going to say. I can't see you when I share my screen. So don't raise your hand. Just put your question in the chat or wait until Valerie will ask it, or you can then interject. If I don't stop and ask for questions, honestly, I'm happy to take interruptions, especially with a group this size. So, all right, does anybody want to ask any questions before we get started? No, thank you for your encouragement on my outfit. I was pretty psyched about these earrings. I don't need real, but I couldn't resist. I couldn't resist the vintage, the Goodwill. Okay, so let's get to the top here. I'm so excited to teach this to you today because it's really made a huge difference for me. And by the way, I should mention that I am not a licensed mental or physical health professional, and I'm not recommending this like instead of your cancer treatment. Like if you have a broken arm, you should go to the emergency room, right? This is not like a substitute for Western medicine. But I do think that it's a valuable addition and it's safe. It doesn't have like bad side effects and things like that. So, and for me, obviously, as I said, this really has helped me where Western medicine just really was having trouble figuring things out. So that's what I'm titling this, Charging Your Planetary Energies. And if you have questions after this, so you want to contact me and you don't have my email, I'll put it in the chat at the end, but you can also check out my website at spiritsaid.com. Okay, so this is bringing the planetary energies into your life through actions, food, all that kind of stuff. So Today's big idea, here's the big idea that I'm hoping you guys will all get, is that planetary energies transform your life when you take inspired action in the real world. So many of us are used to looking at astrology as a source of like information, but we don't necessarily think, okay, this astrology is actually telling me how I can like transform my life by doing things differently. So it's almost like, you know, off of your astrology chart and into your actual daily existence. And I'll just point out, this is me before, on the right, before channeling planetary energies. You can see how I'm mostly covered up. And I picked this color, which is not the greatest color for me. And the rest of this picture, I'm actually with my mother being hugged by President Obama, believe it or not. And she's dressed identically to me. So the point is that before I started channeling planetary energies, I was really just dressing like my mom, like the models that I had seen in society. And then once I started bringing the planetary energies in, I ended up with a photo that looks much more like this, where I was really trying to go for the Aphrodite, actually, which is the Greek version of Venus, the Aphrodite look. And I feel like I've become much more myself as I've started to bring these energies inside of me. So here's the mindset change that I'm hoping you guys will accompany me on. So now, when I say old vision, this isn't actually the old vision that's the 2,000-year-old vision. This is the old vision that started in like the 1920s when modern Western astrology got going. So it's not old, like this isn't the way that they used to do it. The way that I'm talking about it is much more like the way that the ancients actually looked at astrology. But this is the vision of astrology that you see often in, you know, blogs and on the internet and YouTube, which is that it's about knowledge. It's knowing your chart. We discuss your planets. You have Venus in Leo. You have a square to Mars. People make these superficial changes. They're like, oh, well, now that I have, you know, Venus in Leo, I should have more fun in life. And there's an emphasis on like understanding your energies. Well, now I understand why I have so much trouble at home. It's because I have Saturn in the 4th house, and that's a difficult placement for Saturn. Well, now I understand why I don't set boundaries. It's because I have Mars in Cancer, and Mars in Cancer is bad at setting boundaries. Okay, now I get it. And I think this is helpful. I started this way in astrology, and you know, there's a reason that people are doing this. It's good to have knowledge and know your planets, and now say, okay, I stopped blaming myself because I see that this is a challenge in my natal chart, which means that it's, you know, something that's built into me. It's not my fault. It's just a challenge I have to overcome on this planet in this lifetime. But I would like to suggest an upgrade here. To shift from knowing your chart and having this information into living out your chart. In other words, instead of saying, well, now I see why I have these problems, we look at the chart and we say, okay, now I see how I can develop solutions. Now I see how I can actually change things. So you start living out your planets instead of just talking about them. Instead of making superficial changes, you actually can make a more powerful transformation because you're transforming into the strengths that your chart shows that you have. And instead of saying, I understand my energies, well, now I understand that I have trouble at home because of Saturn in the 4th house. And this is really hard for me. So this is aspirational. I feel like I'm working on this. You learn to love your energies. Instead of seeing, okay, well, Saturn in the 4th house is a problem. And now I understand I have this problem I have to overcome. You learn to say, okay, what can Saturn in the 4th house teach me? What is it that I need to learn to let go of at home? And then maybe if I develop the skill of releasing some of that old family conditioning, then I now have something I can give myself a better life with, and I can help others. So it helps you learn to be grateful for the challenges you have because you understand that they're there for a reason. And you're able to learn or grow or become stronger or develop wisdom as a result of them. And it doesn't mean that you like wake up full of sunshine and happiness every day. Like this morning, I'm like, okay, I had this trauma morning that I really need to overcome. But it also means that you're not stuck with thinking of yourself as somebody who's permanently in trauma, because I literally just changed my clothes and jewelry and I felt better, right? You have these solutions that you can start to say, this energy doesn't have to hold me back anymore. Now I can transfer this into something that works for me. Does anybody have any questions or thoughts about this?
I am not seeing any questions.
Okay, so I'd like you all to take a moment And some of you, I know, have been working with me, so you probably have something in mind, although maybe you can iterate it a little bit from what we've worked on. But for those of you who are new to this idea, I'd like you to just take a moment. You can center yourself, go inside, and ask, what is one life area that I would really like to make better? I'd like to improve here. So like, if I'm going to give this thing that Robin's talking about a try, right? This living out your planets, loving my energies, where in my life could really use that? And it doesn't have to be your hardest area. It could just be something like, I'd like to have better relationships. I'd like to love my career. I'd like to build my business. I'd like to have more peace and calm at home. I'd like to have better physical health. Just take a moment, see what comes up. And if you would like to write that down on a piece of paper or stick it in the chat, I believe personally that when you put things in the chat in a spiritually supportive group with loving people around you, I think spirit honors that because you're making a public declaration of what you would like to improve. I'd like to heal from my past trauma. I'd like to stop thinking about my past mistakes. What is that for you? And then once you've got that, you've got your area, I want you to take a moment and feel into what would it feel like for me to be different in that area? How would it feel different? I'd feel peaceful. I'd feel more positive about myself. I'd feel relaxed. I'd feel enthusiastic about life. For me, I want to feel like enthusiastic about sharing my message and my ideas and not scared. Really feel like, what would it mean for me going forward? And you want to start channeling that energy, that relaxed, peaceful, enthusiastic, confident. Think of another time in your life when you felt that way. I always feel enthusiastic on vacation. So I'm trying to think of my classes as more like an adventure, vacation, exploration, instead of like, I got to get everything right or else people will think I'm a crappy teacher, which is kind of the way I grew up. Think of another moment where you felt that positive energy and bring that in. Because that's going to help you to absorb more of what I'm saying and to have some creative ideas. So I'm asking Spirit, give us all some creative ideas for how we can implement this lesson in our individual area. Okay, so while you're thinking about that, we're going to talk about how to figure out which planet you want to work with. Okay, I'm just going to give you another moment to write that down, put it in the chat, get it in your mind. Okay, great. Thank you guys. Thank you for playing along. I really appreciate that. Okay, so one way to figure out which planet you want to work with is to watch the replay of part 1 in this series where I demonstrated like the astrology technique for figuring out which planets in your chart need extra assistance. This is a technique that's 2,000 years old. People have been doing it basically since then, but it takes some astrology knowledge to figure it out and you have to analyze your chart. So you're welcome to watch that replay. Valerie's going to put that link in the chat if you want to go check it out. By the way, the replay to part 2 is also on Valerie's YouTube channel because she's such a goddess. So you can check that out too. All right, so you can do the astrology knowledge, but another way to figure it out is just to look at what I've got here on the page. And we're going to go through these and ask which of these seems like it's the best fit for whatever life area you just evaluated, like you just decided that you wanted to work on. So for example, if you wanted to work on where you shine, your charisma, your energy, your self-confidence, that's a sun thing to work on. If you want to work on your emotions, on what you long for, or are trying to manifest things in the real world, then you might work with the moon. If you've got something that is mental, communication, intellectual activities, you're trying to memorize stuff in class, or also this Mercury is about business, if you're trying to build your business up, then Mercury is a good planet to work with. Venus is good if you want to work on joy and love, relationships, expressing yourself, or something creative, like you're trying to build a business as an artist. You want to have more fun. We'll go for Venus. Mars is good to work for if you need more physical activity or vigor, or if you need more like you need to be more firm about who you are. You want to set boundaries. You want to be willing to take risks. Like you need more of that courage and physical confidence and strength in your life. Then I would recommend Mars. Jupiter is a great planet to work with if you want growth, learning, abundance. Also, if you are traveling, if you're in higher education, or if you generally want to feel like safer and more secure taking up space. Like that's one of the reasons I picked a Jupiter shirt for this morning, because I woke up feeling like, oh my gosh, it's not safe for me to expand and say what I really think. And Jupiter's like, you heard the term manspreading, where the guy like sits down in the chair and like spreads out his legs and arms. I noticed this, by the way, the commentators at the Olympics, there was a female commentator and she was like very like buttoned up and her arms were crossed and her legs were crossed. And the man was like totally sprawled all over the chair. So if you want more confidence taking up space, Jupiter is great. Saturn is good to work with if you want to let go. You need to get over grief. You want to release your trauma. You want to release conditioning. Or paradoxically, if there's something that you did release that now you want to bring it back, like maybe as a kid, you were full of enthusiasm for dinosaurs, but somebody told you that that wasn't an adult thing. And now you're like, you know what? I really want to enjoy dinosaurs again. Saturn is the gatekeeper of what gets let go and what gets brought back. Uranus is good to work with if you want to deal with change. You need to be more adaptable. I put surviving surprise, like things keep happening to you and you're like, okay, I really gotta like roll with the punches better. Or maybe you want to create some change. You've been stuck for a long time and you want to make progress. Uranus is good for that. If you are interested in spiritual connection, inspiration, channeling your ancestors, or you want to become more comfortable with sort of like what I generally call cosmic experiences, like dreams or visions or signs, then Neptune is a good planet to work with for that. If you want to be more powerful, you need to deal with your shadow and stop running from it, or you want to become a transformational guide for other people. Pluto is good for powerful transformation. Now, I also have Chiron and Lilith on this. They are not planets. Chiron's an asteroid and Lilith is a calculated point. But they do symbolize things that you might want to work with. So Chiron is for specifically healing and dealing with pain. If you want to take your pain and turn it into wisdom, like you're stuck in the pain spot and you're having trouble learning. If you find yourself getting triggered and there are these wounded responses and you're like, oh my gosh, I just get stuck and then I can't figure out what to say or I can't think anymore, Chiron is good. And Lilith is a good point to work with if you are like feeling very isolated or alone, or you like there's a path laid out for you, but you're like, wow, I think a lot of people in my life might not like this. And you need to deal with rejection and learn to like plant your flag and fight for what you believe in, and then sort of let the chips fall where they may. Now, Valerie, maybe Valerie will put in the link, but if not, I can put it in at the end. I have a table that has colors and foods and all kinds of stuff for all these planets. I don't actually have Chiron and Lilith. So if anybody wants to work with those, you can research that. Or if you want to email me, I will assemble a couple of things for Chiron and Lilith if people are interested in that too. And by the way, any of you here who are practitioners, if you want to experiment with this yourself and then start recommending it to people that you're helping, I would be happy to have you do that. I did not invent this technique. It's not proprietary to me. And I would love for people to be able to use it and expand it, because I think it's a great complement to Western medicine, which has given us a lot of wonderful things, but this is an area where it tends to fall short a bit. So feel free to take a screenshot of this, or if you want to email me after the fact, I can email this to you. I also have some free planetary keyword tables on my website on the free resources tab that have a lot of this stuff. These are not like my personal meanings for these planets. They're pretty standard, so you'll find them all over the place. Does anybody have any questions about anything on this, or do you want to ask? If you want to pop on for a moment and tell me what you're thinking of working on, I can give you a little advice about which planet to choose. This is the pause for questions and tea break. Hello.
1 second. I've got to
Okay.
let
I
them
just wanna make
unmute.
sure.
And I'm trying to get the link. I'm trying to multitask. There's the link you all for the free resources. And Mish,
I'll put that in later.
Melissa has a question. We'll go to Melissa first and then Misha.
All right.
And I'm working on getting you unmuted. Here we go.
Yeah.
Thanks, Valerie.
You're welcome.
So as I'm writing down Mercury, Venus, Jupiter, Saturn, Pluto, I want to work with all of them. How do
Okay.
you choose one to start with?
That's an excellent point. Okay. So there are two ways really to think about this. And this is what I recommend from having done this a lot myself, is that you pick one that you want to do like a long-term transformation with. Now, when I say long-term, it could just be like a month, right? It doesn't mean like the rest of your life. But so from a non-astrological point of view, because once we look at your astrology chart, we might see, you'll see at the end of this, you'll see that there are certain planets that have a bigger effect on other planets. So one is we could look at your astrology chart and see like what rules your ascendant, what rules your sun and moon. But from a strictly like, what do I want to get done in my life? You pick one that is just like, let's just pick one life area to start with. One of the problems that we have as humans is that some of us are good at identifying 6 life areas that all need work. But as you know, like if you're trying to make 6 recipes at once, it's not terribly successful. So it's like, okay, given that in my whole life, I would like to improve these 10 things, which one's really calling out to me? Or which one do I feel like I could make some progress in if I just had a little more help? In other words, you don't necessarily want to start with the most intractable problem. Like in credit card debt, they tell you to start paying off the smaller credit cards first so that you can see yourself making progress. So you can let your intuition just suggest one to start with, that you're going to be like, okay, I'm going to put together an altar. I'm going to really start thinking about channeling this particular energy in my life for the next month, let's say. But you can wake up on any given day and add to that any of the planets that seem important for the day. So like for me, I'm really trying to figure out how to enjoy building a business, because my whole childhood was like, work is hard, work is miserable, you have to really struggle, it's not fun. So it's no surprise that I don't really like working. So I'm like, okay, I really need to change this. So I'm working with Mercury over the long term to make business more fun. But I woke up this morning, and this morning I did not need help from Mercury. This morning I needed help from Jupiter and Venus because I felt terrible and I needed more enthusiasm. So it's almost like you've got the one you're working on for your long-term transformation. And then in any given day, if you want to add in and ask for some extra energy from another one, you can definitely do that. Does that help?
Yeah. Yep. I know I'm going to start with one of them.
Okay, great. And at the end of this, depending on whether I need to do the readings for the people who may or may not be here, we can definitely dive into your chart a little bit more and talk about that. Yeah. Okay. All right, Misha.
So yeah, no, I'm another one that, you know, tries to take on all the things at once. Because why just do one thing when you can try and take on everything at the same time?
Right.
But at the same time, I'm also beating myself up for all of my past mistakes. And I know letting go of them is going to help me be able to focus more fully on the one thing. And taking what you just told Melissa to heart, I can definitely use that towards focusing on the one thing. But which planet is the best to work on to help stop thinking about past mistakes, or forgiving myself for past mistakes, or past, you know, I don't know.
Do you have a birth time? Do you know what time you were born?
Yes, 12:38 a.m.
Okay. So in general, and this is true for, this is a generic answer for all people. In general, if you were born at night, which is to say the sun was below the horizon when you
Yeah.
were born, so you were, right? If you have a night birth, now that doesn't mean, by the way, I was talking to somebody the other day who misunderstood this. This doesn't mean that your sun is at the bottom of your astrology chart necessarily. Like it might be, but it might be kind of at the edges. But if you're born with the sun below the horizon, then, oh no, sorry, that's not what I mean. It doesn't mean that the majority of planets are below the horizon in your astrology chart. It's just the sun. The sun is at the bottom of your astrology chart, you're born at night, then Venus is the most positive planet in your chart.
And I was born with Venus in retrograde.
Mm-hmm.
So
Okay.
I don't know if that has any difference or makes
Right.
any difference
It's a
at
good
all.
question. Yeah. So I will mention if somebody's born at when the sun is above the horizon, not the rest of the planets, just the sun. If you're born during the day, the sun is above the horizon, then Jupiter is the most positive planet in your chart. So for something like that, if you're just like, I need more positivity, then you can always default to either working with Venus if you're born at night and Jupiter if you're born in the day.
Okay.
So with your Venus retrograde, thank you for mentioning that. What is probably needing to happen here is that you need to look at the past, because retrograde planets always mean that you have more of a focus to, okay, so retrograde planets mean you have a focus on the past. If you want them to work for you, instead of lamenting having so many retrograde planets, you change that to a focus of learning from the past. So what I would do is I would start working with Venus energy, and you might pull in a little Chiron as well, because Chiron is great for wisdom through pain. Pull in the Venus energy and ask for lessons about what you did not like in the past and make a plan about how you're going to do things differently.
Okay.
So what you want to do is release the focus on the past that goes with beating yourself up for it. And I'm sympathetic. I've done that a lot. Release the beating yourself up part and replace that with the learning to do things differently part. I'm not that person anymore who made that mistake, because now I know that that didn't work out the way I wanted it to. So what's my plan to not recreate that situation next time? Retrograde planets give people a great ability to learn from the past because you're so good at analyzing it.
Yeah.
But you need Venus to help you move forward with positivity and joy rather than getting stuck in that past stuff. It's like, okay, how am I gonna do this differently?
Okay.
That's my suggestion there.
All right. Thank you so much.
Help me love the life that I'm living now, because I have learned so much. And I will mention, Spirit talks to me a lot about this because I'm also very good at beating myself up over past stuff. And what they say is they're like, it didn't work out the way you wanted it to, right? You decided that wasn't the experience you want to have again. But that doesn't mean that like you messed it up or you made a mistake. It's not a moral wrong. It's just a lesson learned that that wasn't the result that you want to create again for yourself. So they're like, you can say, okay, that was a good lesson for me not to do that again, but I don't need to like blame myself for being an idiot or a fool or disorganized or weak or pathetic or whatever those like negative judgments are about it.
I need to reframe it as looking at it as this was a lesson learned.
Yeah, what they said to me is they said that humans are fundamentally experiential learners. And so we don't have the ability to always like learn all of our quote unquote challenging lessons without actually experiencing the experience. Like sometimes you can look at somebody else's example and say, well, that happened to them, so I can avoid that, right? Grandparents are constantly telling us, don't make the mistake I made when I was your age, right? But that we're only able to do that to some degree. And there are some lessons that we really just have to learn by going through it. And that's part of who we are as humans. So we don't have to blame ourselves for having to go through these things. We're not bad or weak or pathetic people or idiots because somehow we didn't foresee that this was going to happen, because we have to learn by experience, right? Like no kid can learn to walk without attempting to walk and then falling down. Like my sister, apparently, when she was learning to walk, hit her head on the coffee table and was delayed by 6 weeks. This is the famous story in my family. But you can't learn to walk without falling a few times, because humans just learn from experience. So
well, and it's especially true if your parents tell you not to do something because this is going to happen. it's 100% that you're going to do the exact opposite of what your parents tell you to do, because, it's your parents that told you not to do it. Or if you tell your children not to do it, because this is what's going to happen, 100%, they're going to do the opposite. And that's what's going to happen because you told them, that was what was going to happen. So, yeah. Okay.
That's what they say. You don't blame yourself for having to learn by experience. We made you that way. Spirit made us to learn through experience. I know. I know, right? They're like, it's not like school. You're not getting graded. You haven't accumulated a C average, and now you're going to have to ace the final in order to pass the class. Like,
oh my God. Yeah. Because we both had those overachiever parents that, Okay. Yeah. No, I got it. I feel you. Okay. Thank you.
I'll also pass on, and then I'll move to the next slide or the next question. I'll also pass on the maxim Spirit gave to me, which is you need to learn to be 10,000 times nicer to yourself.
Oh, 100 freaking percent. Yes.
10,000.
Yes. I know. Okay. Amen. Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you for coming. Okay. Anybody else have any questions before I move to my next slide?
Not seeing anything.
Okay, great. Thank you for all your questions, guys. It really means a lot to me. So let's get to the nitty-gritty of what you could actually do to channel and encourage your planetary energies. So this is 4 categories. This is just, again, from my experience. There are other things. Don't take this as a restrictive list. It's just an idea of to give you ideas of what to do. So there are ceremonial things we can do. And people, again, have been doing this for thousands of years. So you can put together an altar. You can put together rituals. If you come to Valerie's and my full moon and new moon events every 2 weeks, we present rituals all the time, and you're welcome to take those or tweak them. I have a Mercury altar that I do, since I mentioned I'm working with Mercury over the long term to transform my view of business into something that is fun and creative and joyful. So I leave new offerings on my Mercury altar every day and just ask for Mercury's business genius energy to come into my life and give me wisdom. I'm also trying to develop a better relationship with my business instead of seeing it as something that always needs to be taken care of or a place for me to fail, but that we're partners working together. So pulling together the right foods or lighting candles or putting out prayers or whatever. And I've mentioned in my last part 2, which is also on Valerie's YouTube channel, that you can look at the planets as divine energies themselves. You can look at them as physical objects, like the way we say Mother Earth has energy. You could say the planet Mercury has an energy, or the moon, the rock in the moon has an energy. Or I look at them as aspects of divine love. So I don't think I'm praying to Mercury, in the old Greek and Roman way. I'm thinking of myself as I am using Mercury as a representation of the aspect of divine love that's going to help me learn to love my business. So you can sort of think about the planetary energies in whatever way seems to work for you. I once asked my spirit guide, why not just say, Spirit, help me? What's the advantage of narrowing it down to talk to a specific planet? And Spirit said it's a little bit like going into the restaurant and deciding what you want on the menu, or going into the library and picking a specific book. That it really narrows things down so that you are making decisions about where you want to transform. But I really think that's kind of a big tent sort of thing. So if people have questions about that, you're welcome to ask me. But you can also just look inside and see what sort of vision or view of planetary energy appeals the most for you. Okay, so ceremonies, altars, rituals is a good way to enhance planetary energy. I've already told my story of the physical objects, where this morning I woke up and I'm like, clothing. I need better clothing. I also decorate things. So home decor, the color of your bedspread or the art that you put up. If you want more Venus energy, you could choose a picture that seems like it's Venusian, has Venus qualities for you. Also, you can change your diet, and you can start not just offering foods on your altar, but actually cooking. So when I wanted more physical energy, I had been sick and I had a back injury and I was literally in bed for a year. And I just was weak when I got up because I had lost a lot of muscle tone. So I added a bunch more Mars stuff to my food, and I started cooking with more spices, with more pepper. I started making more Indian food. And every time I cooked it, I'm like, okay, I am adding more spices because I want to channel the physical energy of Mars into my body. So what you eat can help you channel these energies. We love crystals. So crystals, all the planets have crystals associated with them. And by the way, this is that link down at the bottom. If you go to my website, Spirit Said, and the free resources page, there's a whole table with all foods and colors and things like that associated with the planets. And once I stop teaching, I'll actually find this link and put it in chat for you. So, and then you can also wear the crystals. So this picture here is actually a Saturn bracelet. Saturn is associated with dark colored stones. And I was going through a Saturn transit. And so I made this bracelet for myself. It's nice. It's more powerful. Many people feel if the crystals actually touch your skin, but that's not essential. You can just have them in your environment, or you can wear them as jewelry, even if it doesn't touch your skin. Now, Planetary Charity is something that was very big in the ancient world. So if you had gone to a doctor 2,000 years ago, they almost certainly would have suggested Planetary Charity along with whatever herbal medications and things that they gave you. This is something people don't do so much anymore, but I think it's really cool. And it's definitely made a big difference for me. So basically what you do is you pick an organization or an individual in need that fits with the theme of your planet. So like, let's say I wanted more Venus energy. Venus is associated with the arts. So maybe I donate money or volunteer at a local arts organization. Or maybe instead of just going out and doing random Christmas shopping, I get online and do all my Christmas shopping from the Metropolitan Museum of Art. It's an arts association. Or if you are wanting to work with Saturn because you want to let go of your conditioning and your grief. You're like, I'm done with this grief. I don't need it anymore. Saturn is associated with homeless and poor people, mendicants. So you could give money to a homeless shelter, or you could give money or like a food voucher or coupon to a homeless person. Saturn is also associated with thrift stores. So you could shop at a thrift store, or you could donate money to a thrift store. Or obviously you could just pray or send positive energy to those organizations. If you want to work with Jupiter, Jupiter's associated with higher learning. So you could give a donation to a local university or a scholarship program that sends kids to university. Or you could simply say a prayer for kids in college or kids in graduate school, that they're able to get through their challenges and graduate on time. So it's like you're taking whatever you have out of your plenty or overflow, if it's time, if it's money, if it's clothes or whatever, and you're giving them to an organization that is specifically oriented to the energies that you're trying to enhance. So I'm hoping that you can see that this goes beyond just saying, Venus, please answer my prayer and help me feel more positive, which is great. And I totally support you in doing that. But once you start actually giving and like thinking about these organizations, then the energy starts to flood into you in a much more diverse sort of way. And then if you really want to put the cherry on top of that, you start taking some actions that relate to this energy. So you guys have been in my classes for a bit, know that I'm constantly talking about these photo shoots that I do, which are for me a big part of channeling my Venus and Jupiter energies, because I have all these messages that are about like hiding, and I have some childhood sexual abuse. So it's like, it's not safe to look attractive. And I got to tell you, it's terrifying, but also exhilarating to actually like put together an outfit and get in front of a camera and then have them start taking photos and then share the photos in public. But it really is helping me to increase these energies because I'm actually doing something. So I showed you the earlier picture where I was in the photo shoot channeling Aphrodite. So you can, as you're doing it, you can imagine the energy of like Mars or Venus or whatever flooding through you. You can also think of some inspirational figures. So like, for example, let's say you had the moon in Scorpio. Moon in Scorpio is a challenging placement because the moon is very nurturing and emotional. And Scorpio has a lot of sort of like intense energy around trauma and shadow work and honesty. And it's not always the easiest energy. But you could think of moon in Scorpio as like Xena, the warrior princess, where you're nurturing, but you're nurturing by taking on the bad guys. So instead of like fighting against yourself or beating yourself up over things, you could say, no, I'm fighting for those who need protecting. So I personally find inspirational figures like all over the place, like, you know, Harry Potter or the movies or Brad Pitt, like whoever you can think of where you're like, man, that person has the energy I really need. Start thinking, how would I feel if I were as confident in my physical vigor as Brad Pitt is? You know, how would I feel if I were as surrounded by friends and supported as Harry Potter is? So ask yourself, and you can ask the planet, help bring that energy into me. So change your exercise habits. If you want more Venusian energy, then when you go to the gym or you go for a walk, start, instead of just putting on grungy exercise clothes, start putting on exercise clothes that actually make you feel attractive and beautiful. So actions could be like, well, normally I don't really cook for myself because I just do takeout all the time. But I feel like, you know, Jupiter would be trying some interesting foods. So I'm going to go out and I'm going to start finding recipes for my favorite ethnic foods, and I'm going to start making them myself, because Jupiter's all about expanding my horizons. And I'm just going to make this new food, even if I've never made it before, even if it doesn't come out good, I'm going to give it a try. Like, change the habits that you have so that you're starting to bring that energy into your life. And you may feel like, well, I want to experience more Jupiter energy so that I can feel safer. How is cooking ethnic food going to make me feel safe? But it doesn't really matter. We're going to talk about that in a bit. Like, we're not in a world of quote unquote hard reality where there has to be like a one-to-one connection between everything you do and everything you're trying to fix. This is the realm of what I would call like psychological magic, right? And spirituality, where it's like you're saying to the universe, I want to feel safer. I am cooking unfamiliar ethnic food as a way of feeling safer. Please, inner psyche, help me feel safer as I put energy into cooking this food. And it will work. It will work. Like, this is not the realm of Western science where we all have to say, well, technically the molecules of the medication break down and stimulate the limbic system, which releases a flood of positive hormones. Like, it doesn't have to work this way because you're working with spirit and you're working with your higher self. Okay. Does anybody have any questions that they want to ask about this raft of ideas I've suggested here, or how they might apply to a specific planet?
I have a question. This is Grace. So I know that the days have planetary associations, and what I've been doing so far is just like, if I feel like I need to, wearing those colors on specific days. But I know that that's kind of just like a generic thing to do. So should I maybe like look and see if those planets are in good placement and then determine whether to wear that? Or like be avoiding some colors to wear? I'm just not really sure, like, because that's kind of what I'm going off of as like my basis, and then seeing if that feels right for the day. But like today's Saturn, and I don't feel like, I never feel like wearing Saturn colors. Like, I don't want to. And then for the moon, I'm like, well, I feel like all the colors encompass the moon.
Okay.
Or like warm, like pastel colors. So I'm just, what's your take on that?
Okay, thank you. That's a good question. So I will mention a couple of things. One is that you kind of can't go wrong with this. So if it feels right to you to wear certain colors on a certain day, that's a perfectly good thing. Right? The most important thing is your own intuition about what energy is best for you. But I will say that, and what Grace is referring to, in case you guys maybe don't know, like Monday is associated with the moon, and Tuesday is associated with Mars, and Wednesday is associated with Mercury. On the same tab actually on my website has the planetary lists, the planetary material. It mentions the day that goes with each planet. So in general, those are very useful if you're planning like a Mars ritual and you want to amp it up by doing it on Tuesday. You could totally do that. However, if you decide that you're going to, because I started with this actually, so I have personal experience. If you decide that you're going to wear moon colors on Monday, Mars colors on Tuesday, Mercury colors on Wednesday, it's kind of like flipping very quickly through a series of cards where it's like you're not really absorbing enough energy from any one of the planets to make a difference in a stuck area in your life. Like, they go by very quickly. And so in my experience, you're better off picking one or two planets and really concentrating on that. Now, in addition to each day being associated with a planet, there's a website called planetaryhours.net. That's called planetaryhours.net. Every day actually has 2 hours that are associated with every planet. So if you want to do a Mars ritual on Wednesday and the time is important to you, you can just look up what the Mars hours are on Wednesday and do it there. But my general suggestion is to, rather than try to like honor any individual day just because it happens to be that day, is to make a more like purposeful decision about what you want. I want more physical health. I want more peace and calm. I want more optimism. And then just focus on that day, the day associated with that planet every day. So if you want more physical energy, then have a plan for what you're going to do every Tuesday, because every Tuesday is the Mars days. And then on the other days of the week, you can keep wearing Mars colors if you want. You can keep giving offerings on your Mars altar, or you can kind of like go with the flow on whatever seems like it's necessary for you. But there's no need to like honor all 7 planets every week, because I think that our energy just kind of gets a little bit jumbled when we do that. Does that make sense?
Yes, thank you.
You are welcome. I just want to say, I think it's super cool that we are all sitting around, and Grace here, all of us are actually asking these questions, because these are literally questions that people have not asked in public in any great quantity since 500 AD. Like it's been 1500 years since people had a legitimate public debate about this stuff. So that just kind of gives me chills a little. All right, anybody else want to ask something? Okay.
Yes, we have a question.
So, oh, yeah.
And the question is, how would you harness Mercury energy?
Right. So Mercury is associated with things that are, first of all, so from a like a color and style standpoint, Mercury is associated with things that are multicolored or speckled. So any stones that have multiple colors in them, like labradorite or opal, those are all good stones for that. In general, Mercury energy is like fast and like detailed. So if you're looking at decor, you're looking at patterns. It's great for things that are mental or involve communication. So you can enhance Mercury energy by like posting on social media or commenting on other people's posts, or by sending out an email to people, or by doing an analysis, or like reading a book. All those are Mercury type activities. Watching informational videos, gathering data and information. If you want to do Mercury charity, then I would definitely be giving to like communication or intellectually based organizations. So if you wanted to donate to a research project, or you wanted to volunteer, teaching kids after school, or donate to like an English as a second language school, all of those sorts of things would be great for Mercury. And then my experience with Mercury as an energy is that Mercury has like tons of like fun and creativity and wanting more action. So instead of like being at home all the time by yourself during the pandemic, jump on meetups, start a discussion group, email your friends and create an online book club. Anything that gets you like communicating with other people or gathering information or exchanging energy is all very Mercury-like. And also, as I say, once you check out the Planetary Ritual Altar Material PDF, there's a bunch of stones and foods and things like that go specifically with Mercury. Yeah, Mercury's fun. I got to tell you, Mercury's a lot more fun than I thought he was going to be. I was like, do you love business? And he's like, I'm the Lord of business. I think business is awesome. I was like, can you teach me to have fun with business too? So yeah. And I will mention, by the way, that it depends a little bit on what aspect you're working with. So like if you want to work on the social communication aspect of Mercury, social media is great. But if you want to use, like I am, Mercury for building your business, you might want to donate to like one of those startups that gives microloans to like women entrepreneurs. So you can kind of tweak it depending on what aspect of the planetary energy you really want to build up. Okay, any other questions?
I was just thinking, or like a Toastmasters organization.
Yes. Yeah, join Toastmasters. That would be amazing. Yeah, great call. See, it's really not about getting it wrong, right? You should feel free to experiment and see what works. But if you just tap into your intuition, come up with some stuff that's associated with the planet. Okay, anything else?
Not seeing anything.
Okay, so I got a couple slides here that are kind of like, you know, Robin's tips for success. What I've learned from doing this and working with clients who do it. So how this works. Now, when I say works, I really mean two things. First of all, this is a little bit about actually how it works and why it's effective. It's not like, you know, show magic where you're like, well, it's all an illusion, right? It really does work psychologically. But this is also how this works. Like what I've discovered really helps while doing it, like what makes it effective when we pursue it. So the first thing, this works by changing, this helps you change your inner identity by channeling new energy and beliefs. So for example, you may think of yourself as, oh, I'm a very risk averse person. I really like to play it safe and I'm hard on myself when I make mistakes. Okay, but now you're like, but I want more Jupiter energy in my life. So I'm going to try experimenting by cooking this unfamiliar ethnic food. And then all of a sudden you're like, wait a second, I am adventurous. Look at me cooking this ethnic food, right? I'm bringing in that new energy and the new beliefs about yourself, which changes the way you see yourself. From I'm hard on myself about my mistakes to I can experiment with something new. So it changes who you are on the inside, right? You're asking the planet, help me become different in the way that I interact with this area in my life. Right? You attract spirit's attention and energy with resonant objects and actions. Here I am, spirit. I put on this blue shirt, relaxed shirt, because blue is for Jupiter and relaxed is for Jupiter. Please help me become more relaxed. You know, oh, okay, Venus, I'm attracting my belief in my own attractiveness by putting on this pink sequins and these earrings with their roses. Please help bring this energy in. And spirit will always meet us. Spirit will always meet our effort with a response. If you're like, just like if you had a little kid who was like, can you please help me get a glass of water? You wouldn't ignore that kid. You'd be like, great, why don't you come on over and I'll reach the glass for you and then I'll show you how to fill it at the tap, right? Spirit always assists us. So when we pull in the foods, the actions, we donate to a charity group, spirit's like, she's really putting in some effort down there. She's really working hard at this. Well, all right, I'm in. I'm here to help. And so it's like you develop that partnership with this aspect of divine energy by taking objects, by using objects and taking actions that resonate with it. Okay, this is important. Now we're into the actual part here. You're priming your psyche for change by doing things differently. And this is really important because a lot of us, especially when we're talking about like sticky life areas, a lot of us have been this way for a long time. My hunch, and I could be wrong, but my hunch is that today is not the first time you've thought to yourself, wow, I really need to become more trusting in my relationships. Or gosh, I really would like to enjoy my work more and not feel like I'm slaving for 5 days and then like, you know, like recharging for 2. Or gosh, I would like to be less hard on myself about my mistakes, right? Most of us know that these are areas we've been working on changing. And bravo, by the way, for being here and thinking about change at all. And so a lot of us have been stuck in these things where we're like, well, I need to be different. Well, I want to be different. Well, I should be different. Maybe beating ourselves up because we're not different yet. But we're not as different as we want to be because all of us have parts of us in our psyche that resist change. Change is scary. Change is a lot of work. Change is unpredictable. So even if you're like, okay, I'm not convinced that it really is safe for me on this planet to take up space. But on the other hand, I've never cooked ethnic food before and I'm now doing that differently. Your psyche is kind of like, okay, maybe I could change. Maybe I don't have to be stuck like this forever. Like you see yourself getting ready to be different. And even if it's in an area that's not the big one or not quite so scary, like the fact that I get up every morning and change out the offerings on my Mercury altar because I want to learn to enjoy my job, even if I'm having a terrible day and I'm not enjoying my business at all that day, I'm like, but I took an action because I want to be different. And so it gets you into that mindset of transformation. And then this is really important. It triggers areas for healing. So I get up in the morning and I change out my Mercury altar offerings. And then my inner self is like, you can't enjoy business. Dad said business was miserable. Dad said you're supposed to hate your business. Dad hated working when you were a kid. And if you like working now, you're being disloyal to him because he slaved away, but you're not slaving away. Like, these are the things that are like, you can't do that. I was talking to a client recently and they were like, I'm feeling some resistance around this. And I'm like, yeah, I totally get it. Because there are those parts of us that are like, you know, stuck the way we are, that they're like attached to the way we are. So when you take these, you do these actions and you take these changes, parts of you that don't want to change, that don't feel good about change, will come up. And this is your chance to heal them. This is your chance to be like, hey, let me look at that inner part of myself that thinks that now, 40 years later, I'm still responsible for hating my job because I saw that Dad hated my job 40 years ago when I was 9. What is that part of me that thinks that Dad 40 years ago and me now have some energetic connection where I'm like honor bound to continue his negative energy? What can I say to that part of myself? You know, Dad hated his job, but you don't have to. Maybe you could make up for Dad's negative energy with your own positive energy. Maybe Dad was a role model for you that you hate your job, but would you like to be a role model for others that you can love your job? Like, they bring that up and then you're like, okay, this is what I need. This is what's keeping me stuck. This is what needs healing, nurturing, reframing. Like Misha said, I've got to reframe it as a lesson and not as a mistake to beat myself up for. And so when you start working with the planets, you'll discover that all of these things begin to come up. And then you can be like, oh man, I'm so messed up, which is what I tend to think. And Spirit is like, no, don't think that this can't change. It's just letting you know what your blocks are so that you can start finding a way to reframe them. Does anybody have any questions about this? Thoughts? Can you guys relate to any of this stuff that you've felt these being triggered when you started to change, or desiring to change your inner identity but not knowing how?
That's a yes to people can relate, and I'm not seeing any questions.
Yeah. All right. Okay. So this next the next slide is like, you know, my tips for success with this. Let go of on the one side and instead do this on the right side. So let go of the reward you get for staying stuck. And instead pick 1 or 2 planets to start with and then just like stick with them for a bit. The reward we get for staying stuck is things like, well, I'm a cautious person and I don't make silly mistakes. So I'm not gonna do something that's like untried and weird, like working with planetary energies. So it's like, I can congratulate myself for being a sane, rational person by dismissing this weird suggestion. That's a reward we get for staying stuck. Or, well, I've always been this way and, you know, I may not love my life, but at least I'm, you know, putting food on the table. What if I change and then I suddenly can't make a living anymore? You know, it's like, well, this may not be the life I want, but it's not a total failure. What if I change and then things get even worse? And so the reward there is like, I'm keeping myself safe by staying the same because at least I know that I'm not, you know, lying dead in a ditch with this current method. Let go of those rewards. You might have to think about what they are a little bit. And if you want to contact me, I'll help you. We can work through them. Let go of the rewards you get for staying stuck and just pick a couple planets and give it a go. See what happens. Start with 1 or 2. There's this, you don't have to go buy anything. I guarantee you have enough stuff in your wardrobe and in your house and in your collection of rocks and in your pantry to at least work with a couple planets for a month and just give it a try. Okay. Let go of playing it safe and instead overcome your fear and decide to want something. So there's this little part of me, my spirit guide is like, what do you want? And I'm like, I don't want anything because the minute I say I want something, it's going to get taken away. This is like a childhood message. The minute you start to feel good about yourself, somebody's going to come and say that you're messing everything up. The minute you say something's important to you, somebody's going to come along and tell you you can't have it. Like there's that part of us that's like, it's scary to say, no, I want to enjoy my business, damn it. No, I want a relationship where I feel like I'm as important as my partner. No, I want to heal from this trauma. I don't want to have to continue to listen to, you know, my abuser's voice in my head all these years later. Like, it's okay to say, I want to be different. I know there's a lot to be said for playing it safe because it feels safe, but I urge you to decide to want something and then pick a planet that you think is going to help you get there. Okay, this is a big one. Let go of having to know how it works. I'd like to point out that for thousands of years, nobody knew why the bark of the willow tree, tea made from the bark of the willow tree, was good for reducing inflammation. But for thousands of years, healers prescribed it. They prescribed willow bark tea to decrease inflammation and pain. Now, I don't know exactly what the timing is, but sometime in the last like 150 or 200 years, modern science was developed, which by the way required the development of the microscope. And all of a sudden people discovered a compound which they called salicylic acid, which is present in willow bark. And then nowadays we distill salicylic acid out of the willow bark and we brand it and sell it as aspirin. So people don't drink willow bark tea so much now as they just go take a couple of aspirin. And for thousands of years, nobody had any idea how it worked. People didn't understand the human body's function enough to know how salicylic acid in the willow bark decreased inflammation. But they could see that it did. And how sad would it have been if thousands of years of healers refused to prescribe willow bark tea because they didn't know how it worked? So the advancement of human society is full of people who don't know how things work, but they're willing to try it. So instead of having to know how it works, let go of that. And instead become an experimental adventurer. Just try this, see what happens and tweak to improve. Like I have found that clothing is a great way to channel planetary energies, but honestly, I've loved clothing since I was 5. You might not be a clothes horse like me, but you might find that food is a much better way to channel planetary energies. Or you might try that charity thing and be like, oh man, this is super powerful for me. So give it a go, see what your results are, try a whole bunch of stuff, tweak it to see maybe something super powerful for you, but you kind of found it tedious and boring. And you're like, all right, I would really like to find something super powerful that I also think is fun and cool, right? Understand that this isn't like, it's not like, this isn't something that you're going to be instantly good at necessarily. You don't walk into algebra class on day 1 of algebra and already know algebra. You expect to spend the entire year in algebra getting better at it. And then at the end, you'll know what you're good at. Okay, let go of your fear of getting it wrong. So I was talking to somebody recently and she was like, well, and she was talking all about the rituals and this and that. And her energy just seemed like very serious about the whole thing. And she was like, I'm afraid I'm just doing it wrong and it's not going to work. And I'm like, why are you afraid of getting your ritual wrong? And she's like, well, it's a ritual. You got to get it right. And I was like, that sounds like conditioning to me, right? Like, you got to get it right. You got to get all the details right. And yes, she does have some planets in Virgo. I also have planets in Virgo. We want to get it right. But planetary energies is really more like okay, there are foods associated with planets, right? There's certain colors, there's certain stones. There's a blueprint for a ritual, which Valerie gave in part 2, which is great. But more than having to get it all right, it's really more about finding what works for you and what you enjoy. There are many, many ways to channel planetary energies. You might be totally bored by the food thing, or perhaps you hate to cook, but you're like, you know what? I am kind of an exercise nut. Maybe I could think about some Mercury exercise tactics, or I love taking walks in nature. So instead of using Robin's list of Mercury stones, I'm just going to go out in nature and ask Spirit to give me a rock that reminds me of Mercury and use that. Like, dive into what it is that is really vital and living and energetic and produces the change you seek for you, instead of like feeling like, oh my gosh, here's another list of instructions and rules and I've got to dot all my I's, because the last thing we want to do here is make you more anxious or concerned or worried. And then the last thing is, let go of your ideas about people who do this kind of stuff. Now, maybe you don't have this. This is the email, by the way, that caused the vulnerability hangover in the last couple of days, because I had a lot of ideas about this. I had a lot of voices that are like, this is weird. This isn't scientific. There's a reason people did this 2,000 years ago, but they don't do it anymore, which is that now we're living in modern society and this doesn't have any place. Like, I just had all kinds of bad ideas about this. And you might have those too. I was like, this is weird. And if people find out I do this weird stuff, they won't respect me anymore. And I invite you and me to let go of our ideas about this and whether this is substantive or modern or appropriate or respectable, and instead persevere in healing yourself and in leveraging your strengths to create a satisfying life. right? Like all these limitations, ideas about people who do this stuff, fear of getting it wrong, having to know how it works, playing it safe, reward we get for staying stuck. None of this is really about loving ourselves and creating a great life. Now, I'm not saying we should be unsafe, right? Like there are poisonous foods, don't eat them. You know, I think it's interesting to talk about how it works, and we can certainly discuss that. You know, there are ways to get it wrong, like don't over exercise and injure yourself. But in general, you want to let go of these things that are all preventing you from taking positive steps. Let go of the beating yourself up about the mistakes and embrace the learning to do things differently and making a plan for how you're going to go forward. So I want to invite you guys for a moment to sit and think. And if you want to put it in chat, that would be amazing. What is it that is holding me back? And maybe it's something on this list that you're like, wow, I really do need to let go of this. This obviously is not an exhaustive list. Maybe there's some other stuff. What is it that I really want to let go of? Is it worry about what other people are going to think? Is it fear of getting disappointed? What if I try this and it doesn't work and then I'm a screw up because I really can't change? You're always welcome to contact Valerie or me if you want help in changing. Maybe it's, I don't really believe in this. Like, I don't really believe there are energies out there that want to help me. I feel like I'm all alone in life. I have that. It's all on me. There's nobody to help me. And I'd like you to just think for a moment, what could I do to let go of that? What do I want to replace it with? Instead, I want to think what? What do I want to replace this with? Instead of being afraid of what other people think, I want to believe I'm doing something good by bringing a diversity of opinion and information to the marketplace. What's my reframe that would help me get the most? Instead of feeling foolish because I could have been working with Mercury all this time, but I never did, I'm going to decide that maybe it wasn't right for me before, but now I really am ready. Where's that moment of change for you? You can put it in chat if you want to make a public declaration, or just write it down or say it out loud.
There's one in chat that I will share. Replace the getting it wrong with at least I'm getting to it.
Great. I love that. I love that. How about replace I'm alone and it's all on me with there are energies out there that I haven't used yet. Or I plan to find new energies of support. You know, very few of us, almost nobody has ever tried Planetary Charity. If you're really at the end of your rope, try that. I will mention, by the way, that on the Indian subcontinent, in Vedic astrology, Planetary Charity is much more of a thing. So people who know about that might have thought of that, but Western astrology very rarely talks about Planetary Charity. All right, thank you guys. Thank you for thinking and participating and sharing and contemplating how you want to grow and change. All right, now, if you really want to boost this, you can create what I call a natal chart manifesto. I'm not going to go into this in great detail. And if you want to contact me and do a reading, I can help you build one of these for yourself. But basically what you do is you take the planet, which we've talked about the planets now, and you start adding in the energy of that planet in your astrology chart. So like I have Venus in Leo in my 6th house. So the 6th house is the house of daily work. Leo is the sign of fun and creative self-expression. And then Venus is also about creativity and beauty. So I combined these keywords. 6th house is work, Venus is creativity, Leo is fun, to make a little mantra. Work is fun and creativity, right? I'm letting go of dad's old idea that work is about slaving away and being miserable. And I'm making a new manifesto for myself based on my chart, right? Here's another one. If we look at number 3, I've got Pluto and Uranus and Libra in the 8th house. 8th house is shadow. Uranus is about change. Pluto is about power. Libra is about beauty. So I wrote, My shadow is beautiful, transformative, and powerful. I have these old messages that say you should hide, it's not safe, no one will respect you if they know how troubled you are inside. Don't talk about your abuse, don't talk about your past. That's what Dad used to say. But my new manifesto is, my shadow is beautiful, transformative, and powerful. I don't have to hide it. It's okay to talk about it. It will help other people find courage or wisdom or whatever to transform. And then you start making this into your altar, or making this into your outfit, or making this into your food. And now we're not just working with Venus in theory or Jupiter in theory. We're now actually implementing Venus in your chart. And this is where we start to live our charts instead of just getting information from the chart. Now I ask myself, what am I doing today to make my work about fun and creativity? Like, what action can I take? What action can I take to reassure myself that my shadow is beautiful, transformative, and powerful? Like, I could mention it to you guys, and you guys could say, thank you for sharing. That's really transformative. I'm inspired by your example, or at least just not like hang up on me and tell me that I'm ugly and horrible, right? What action can we take to start living this out? Okay. All right, next class. We got one more in this series.
I have a question about that last slide.
Yeah.
Do you provide that as a service where you could look at someone's chart and give them maybe 4 or 5 manifestos?
Absolutely.
Okay.
I do. People want to schedule. We can schedule a reading if you want to talk through this, and we can talk through your manifesto and create it together. Or if you want to just email me, I will create this and email it back to you. My charge for that is $20, just to take a look at your chart and email a manifesto. Yep, for
Thank
that.
you.
We could also do a class on that. That could be kind of fun to do a create your natal chart manifesto class. Okay, anybody else want to ask about the manifesto concept? I did go away from that somewhat quickly. Okay.
Nope, I'm not seeing anything else.
All right. All right, next class, we're going to actually talk about how to make some astrology jewelry for yourself. We've got bracelets. Here's a pendant. This is also a button that I painted, which has runes in addition to some astrological stuff on it. So if you are thinking, wow, I would like to learn how to make this astrology jewelry and how to choose the right stones and colors, and then we're actually going to give some demonstrations on how to use tools. All you need, honestly, for any of these is, well, for the 2 on the left, you need a couple of supplies from Michael's and a pair of needle nose pliers. And for the one on the right, you obviously need a button and a paintbrush and some paint. But again, super low tech. You don't need a lot of jewelry making skill for any of this stuff. This thing on the left is a Saturn Mars bracelet, and this thing in the middle here is for this is for, I think this was for Saturn in Libra. Saturn in Gemini. This is a Saturn in Gemini thing. Saturn is time, so that's why I used a little time pendant. Anyway, we're going to be going through how to choose charms and bracelets and stones and colors because I love jewelry. So that's why we're doing this. And yeah, so I think did that one just get scheduled, Val? Is it March 20th?
It is scheduled.
Yeah. Okay. We'll put a link for that if you guys, obviously,
it's in the chat.
People, yeah, then you'll be able to come to that. So if you want to take a crack at making your own jewelry for that, you can totally do that too. And then here is the link for, on the right, this is the spiritual resources where you can go, and there's a list you can see here. It's got all the planets and the astrological symbol and the colors and the animals that go with it. So it gives you lots of ideas for food that you can cook, or clothing you can wear, or stones you can use, or little charms and figurines, and there's even a guardian angel for each one of them. So I will say that I put this together just to give people a place to start, but it's by no means an exhaustive list. You're welcome to go on the internet, and if you just look up like foods associated with Saturn, there's a bunch of lists out there, and just take what resonates with you. Some of the foods you might not like. The lists are not always, the same thing on every list. But again, it's more about the intention that you're choosing and then how you implement them in a conscious sort of way. And you can get a free copy of your astrology chart if you don't already have one from astro.com or Cafe Astrology. And if you have any questions, you can contact me, Robinette Poole MX. My website is at Spirit Said, and I'm on Facebook and Instagram at Spirit Said Coaching. Wow, it's exactly, oh, it's 1:31. Okay, so 1 minute over. Does anybody have anything they want to share or ask or any questions? I think we have a couple people who've paid for readings, so we'll see if they're here. And then I also might go through a sample chart if we don't have anybody who paid for a reading and talk about how I would analyze clothing, or people can ask questions if they've got specific questions about their own planets and what they want to do to work with them. Sorry, that was a lot of options. That's probably poor speaker training, is to give your audience. Okay, let's start with questions. Does anybody have any questions?
Misha.
Is the jewelry, so the jewelry class is on the 20th, correct? Is it going to be recorded because I am already booked with something that,
Yes.
so I'm not going to be able to attend. Okay.
It'll be recorded. You'll be able to find the link on my YouTube channel if you're following that, or in the Tarot Unicorns and Coffee Facebook group, which I know you're part of, Misha.
Okay. All right. Perfect. Because I wanted to attend, but yeah, no, I can't. Okay. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Okay, anybody else?
Not seeing anyone else with questions.
Okay. In that case.
Are you going to go into the readings now?
I do, yes. And I just am trying to see.
I'm going to go ahead and stop the recording since you're going to go into someone's personal chart. So we're going to sign off of the recording.
Thank you, listeners. Thank you, YouTube, for listening.